Have you ever found yourself sitting in perfect silence, surrounded by absolute stillness, yet feeling as though you are being torn apart from the inside? The physical room around you is quiet. The tangible danger is completely absent. The devastating event, the profound loss, the shattering rejection, the sudden severing of a bond you thought was eternal, is already in the past. It is over. The dust has settled. Yet the agony coursing through your chest is so blinding, so terrifyingly real, that it steals the very breath from your lungs. You are bleeding out in a reality where no physical weapon has ever touched you. I know this paralyzing weight. I know the sheer exhaustion of waking up every single morning only to remember a reality you desperately wish to forget, feeling the crush of an invisible gravity holding you down in the dark. We often call this the burden of life, and it feels like the heaviest weight a human soul can carry. But I want you to consider something deeply unsettling, an idea that might shake the very foundation of this relentless heartache you are carrying. When a person survives a severe accident and loses a physical arm or a leg, they often experience a bizarre phenomenon that medicine calls a phantom limb. The physical limb is completely gone, buried in the past, yet the brain continues to send signals of excruciating fiery pain to a space that is now entirely empty. The agony is absolutely real to the nervous system, but the source of the pain simply no longer exists in the physical world. What if the crushing weight on your chest right now is exactly that? An emotional phantom limb. What if the trauma you are surviving every single minute of every single day is no longer happening to you, but is merely a ghostly echo reverberating in the empty spaces of your consciousness? Your pain is deeply valid, and the exhaustion you feel is undeniably real. But what if the invisible blade tearing you apart right now is nothing more than a neurological illusion? You are locked inside a room where the doors are wide open, yet you cannot leave. What if you are being held hostage by a phantom, and the true architect of this endless torture is hiding in plain sight, whispering from right behind your own eyes? You are so profoundly tired, I know you are. It is not just the physical weariness that comes from a long day, it is an ancient, bone-deep exhaustion. It is the immense energetic toll of carrying an invisible mountain on your shoulders, waking up each morning already depleted by a war you fought in your dreams. You move through your daily life, pouring your coffee, speaking to your neighbors, functioning as expected, but beneath the surface, your nervous system is vibrating with the intensity of an open wound. There is an ancient quiet wisdom that speaks of the two arrows of human existence. Life in its unpredictable, wildly chaotic nature will eventually draw a bow and fire the first arrow. This arrow is the unavoidable impact of living in this dimension. It is the sudden loss, the devastating rejection, the unexpected betrayal, the collapse of a reality you thought was secure. When this first arrow strikes, it brings raw, undeniable pain. It is the pure friction of the human experience, and no one is immune to it. The initial wound is real, the grief is valid, and the shock is a natural biological response. But here is the invisible danger you face every single day, the quiet existential error that drains the very life force from your consciousness without you even realizing it. The true tragedy does not lie in the first arrow. The first arrow strikes, and then the event is over. It passes into the void of history. The profound danger lies in what happens next. You see, lurking in the shadows of your awareness is a voice, an inner narrator. The moment the dust settles from the initial impact, this narrator steps out from the dark, picks up a second arrow, dips it in the toxic venom of memory and judgment, and drives it directly into the exact same wound, over and over and over again. This narrator is the relentless commentator inside your skull. It is the voice that dissects the tragedy while you lie awake at 3 a.m. It plays the rejection on an infinite, high-definition loop. It whispers that you were not enough, that the world is inherently broken, that the unfairness of it all is a permanent stain on your soul. You feel the physical consequences of this storytelling in the sudden tightness of your jaw, the shallow, restricted breathing in your chest, the cold knot of dread sitting heavy in your stomach. Your physical body does not know the difference between a real threat and a vividly imagined one. Therefore, every time the inner narrator replays the story of your pain, your body releases the exact same flood of stress hormones, responding as if the original catastrophe is happening all over again, right in this very second. This is the ultimate illusion. You are no longer being harmed by the external world. You are no longer bleeding from the first arrow. You are being held hostage by your own internal storytelling. The external villain has long since left the stage, but your ego has taken over the script, assuming the role of the tormentor. To realize this is to experience a profoundly uncomfortable awakening. It forces you to look in the mirror and acknowledge a terrifying truth. The architect of your ongoing agony, the one actively keeping the wound raw and bleeding, is the very voice you have always believed to be you. You are locked in a cage, entirely at the mercy of a voice that insists it is merely protecting you by forcing you to remember the hurt. But look at the heavy toll it has taken. Look at the exhaustion weighing down your spirit. You are trapped in a self-generated loop of suffering, completely identified with a narrator that refuses to let the past die. And the most unsettling part of this realization is not just that you are trapped, but the chilling thought of why this inner voice fights so ruthlessly to keep you chained to your own despair. There is a devastating instinct deeply programmed into the architecture of your mind. When the internal narrator begins its relentless, agonizing loop, when the echoes of rejection or profound loss start to scream inside the quiet of your room, your absolute first impulse is to run. You want to escape the burning sensation in your chest. You scramble to distract yourself, to numb the profound ache, to build colossal, impenetrable walls of energetic armor around your fragile heart. You take the grief, the humiliation, the sheer terror of not being enough, and you compress it into a tight, suffocating box, shoving it into the darkest, most neglected corners of your consciousness. But I want you to pause for a moment and truly feel the physical toll of that suppression. It requires a massive, continuous expenditure of your vital life force just to keep those doors bolted shut. Your shoulders are permanently tense, locked in a subtle state of defense. Your breathing is perpetually shallow, never quite filling your lungs, as if taking a deep breath might accidentally crack the armor and let the dark waters flood in. There is a low-grade, exhausting hum of anxiety vibrating through your nervous system at all times. This is the dark, terrifying paradox of our human experience. By violently resisting the raw emotion, by desperately trying to outrun the invisible ghosts of your past, you are actually crystallizing them. You are taking a fleeting moment of intense natural pain and stretching it out into a lifetime of chronic suffering. Your resistance is the very glue that binds the agony to your soul. The attempt to escape the fire is exactly what is burning you alive. But what if I told you there is another way? A path not of running, not of fighting, but of profound and radical transmutation. Think of the ancient alchemists, those mystical architects of energy, who dedicated their entire existence in darkened, smoke-filled rooms, seeking the ultimate cosmic secret, the ability to turn dense, heavy, worthless lead into pure, incorruptible gold. They understood a fundamental law of this universe that the modern mind has completely forgotten. Energy cannot be destroyed, but it can be radically, beautifully transformed. Right now, that dense, suffocating weight sitting in the center of your chest, that raw, terrifying grief, that unyielding anger, is the lead. It is heavy, it is dark, and it is dragging your personal frequency down into an energetic abyss. But it is also raw fuel. It is an immense, concentrated power currently trapped in a state of suffering. By exposing the invisible mechanics of your own mind, by tearing down the illusion that you must either go to war with your pain or be utterly destroyed by it, you unlock a terrifyingly beautiful power. You step into the alchemical forge of your own consciousness. When you learn the precise internal posture required to simply hold this dark energy in the light of pure observation, a magnificent shift occurs. The lead begins to melt. The agonizing heat of your trauma is suddenly repurposed. It ceases to be a weapon used to torture you in the middle of the night, and it becomes the very fire that purifies your awareness. The chronic suffering dissolves, evaporating into the ether, and what is left behind in the crucible of your mind is impenetrable, golden wisdom. It is an emotional immunity so profound, so deeply rooted, that the chaotic external world completely loses its power to shatter your peace. This is not some cheap, hollow philosophical comfort meant to temporarily soothe you. This is a practical, brutal, and breathtakingly powerful energetic map to your absolute liberation. To achieve this inner goal, to transmute the heavy lead of your past into the boundless power of your present, you do not need to learn a complex new skill or become someone entirely different. In fact, you already possess the exact internal architecture required for this profound energetic release. It is a deeply ingrained blueprint, a pure, uncorrupted mechanism of survival that you were born with, perfectly designed long before the world ever taught you how to hold on to your pain. You just have to remember how this original machinery was meant to function. Let us step away for a moment from the chaotic, unending labyrinth of your mind and look at the sheer, uncorrupted genius of your physical biology. Deep within your earthly vessel, buried entirely underneath decades of accumulated mental noise, heavy emotional armor, and exhausting psychological defenses, lies a pristine, ancient blueprint. It is a biological memory of a time when you were not broken, a state of perfect factory settings that you have somehow forgotten. As you listen to this, I want you to allow yourself to feel a profound, aching nostalgia in the center of your chest. It is a deep yearning for a lightness you cannot quite name, but that you know deep within your bones you were always meant to possess. You see, the crippling illusion of our human existence is the belief that trauma is a permanent life sentence, a heavy, suffocating stone you are fundamentally doomed to carry until the end of your days. But nature never intended for you to hold on to this paralyzing weight. Look out into the unforgiving rawness of the wild. Imagine a gazelle peacefully grazing on the open, sun-baked savanna. Suddenly the wind shifts. A predator strikes from the tall grass. In a fraction of a second, the gazelle's entire nervous system explodes with pure, unadulterated terror. Adrenaline floods its veins. Its heart pounds like a violent war drum, and it runs for its absolute life. The fear is intensely real, a massive, overwhelming surge of primal survival energy. Now imagine the gazelle manages to outrun the threat. It finds a safe haven behind a thicket of trees. What happens next is one of the most vital, majestic displays of biological wisdom on this planet. The gazelle does not immediately go back to eating, nor does it sit down in the dirt and begin to agonize about the predator returning tomorrow. Instead, it stands completely still, and its entire body begins to tremble. It shakes violently, uncontrollably, from its hooves to its neck. This is not a display of weakness. This is the physical, literal discharge of immense trauma. The nervous system is physically expelling the extreme chemical overload of the near-death experience. The animal shakes the horror completely out of its muscles, out of its fascia, out of its very cellular memory. And then, a few short minutes later, the trembling stops. The gazelle takes a deep, grounding breath, lowers its head to the earth, and begins to peacefully graze once again. The trauma is gone. The slate is wiped entirely clean. There are no invisible scars, no phantom limbs of fear gripping its chest. This miraculous built-in reset button is not exclusive to the wild animals of the savannah. It is yours. It is your ultimate birthright. Think of a newborn infant, a tiny, fragile human entirely disconnected from the heavy burdens of language and psychological time. When a baby experiences physical discomfort, a sudden drop in temperature, or a sharp, loud noise, it cries with an astonishing, overwhelming intensity. Its little face turns bright red, its tiny body tenses into a tight ball, and it channels the full, uninhibited force of its distress exactly in the present moment. It feels the absolute peak of the agony without a single ounce of resistance. And yet, the very second the discomfort is removed, the crying stops instantly. Less than a minute later, that same baby is giggling, its eyes bright and wide, its chest rising and falling in perfect rhythmic peace. The baby does not hold onto the memory of the cold. It does not construct a tragic, heavy identity around the loud noise. The pain flows through the tiny nervous system like rapid water over a smooth river stone, leaving absolutely no trace behind. This is the breathtaking truth of your original design. You were born perfectly equipped with the ultimate biological hardware to process, release, and immediately heal from emotional agony in the present moment. Your body intimately knows how to tremble, how to weep with total abandon, and how to return to a state of absolute unshakable grace. Realizing this brings a sharp, poignant ache to the heart, does it not? It is the grief of recognizing how desperately far you have drifted from your own flawless nature, a deep mourning for the effortless release you once naturally possessed. The heavy, exhausting suffering you drag through your days is not a flaw in your human biology, it is a severe deviation from it. You are carrying years of undischarged energy, freezing the fire of your past inside your tissues, instead of letting it burn out naturally. If this perfect immediate reset is our fundamental natural state, if we were brilliantly built to let the pain wash away the exact moment the threat disappears, then a haunting question remains. What on earth happened to us to corrupt this flawless system? And why do we now cling so fiercely to the very suffering we were designed to release? I want you to gently travel back in your mind, far back, past the exhausting noise of your current life, into the quiet, highly vulnerable rooms of your earliest childhood. When you were tiny, your physical survival depended entirely on the giant figures around you, your caregivers. To be noticed by them was to be safe. To be ignored was to face the terrifying, silent abyss of abandonment. And somewhere in those early impressionable years, a quiet, deeply tragic miscalculation took root in your developing nervous system. Think carefully about what happened when you simply existed in a state of natural peace. When you were quietly playing in the corner, content, balanced, and unharmed, you were largely left alone. You were background noise. You were invisible. But remember what happened the day you fell hard against the ground. The physical impact was sharp, your skin tore, and you let out a piercing, terrified cry. In a fraction of a second, the entire world stopped spinning. The giants dropped whatever they were doing and rushed toward you with frantic devotion. You were suddenly scooped up from the cold floor and pressed tightly against a warm, protective chest. Soft, soothing voices flooded your ears, wiping away your tears, telling you how deeply loved you were, how important you were, and how everything would be all right. In that exact, incredibly vulnerable moment, your young, desperately observant mind made a profound and terrifyingly durable association. You realized entirely subconsciously that peace brought isolation, but suffering brought salvation. Your pain became the ultimate currency. It became the only reliable coin you could trade for warmth, deep attention, and the absolute guarantee that you would not be left behind in the dark. You were taught, without a single word ever being explicitly spoken, that your wounds were your most valuable possession. They became your very first victimization trophy, a tangible, visible proof that you were worthy of being rescued. Every single time you held onto a hurt, every time you forcefully prolonged a sob long after the physical sting of the fall had naturally faded, you were not being malicious. You were simply trying to buy more time in the safety of someone else's arms. You were trading your natural biological reset for a few more minutes of guaranteed love. I want you to take a deep breath and feel the heavy, uncomfortable weight of that truth settling into the pit of your stomach right now. Let that chilling realization wash over your entire nervous system. The reason your ego grips so intensely to your current emotional agony, the reason you secretly refuse to let the heavy, suffocating memories of loss and rejection dissolve into the ether, is because a terrified child inside of you still believes that if you let go of the pain, you will lose the love. Your subconscious mind is fiercely running a terrifyingly outdated survival program. It holds up your bleeding, exhausted heart to the universe and says, "Look at how much I am hurting. Look at how heavy my burden is. Please do not abandon me." This is a heartbreaking illusion. You are actively keeping your own consciousness in a state of chronic, deliberate agony because you have deeply confused the presence of suffering with the guarantee of emotional connection. You are starving for a sense of belonging, and you are secretly using your own internal torment as the only valid currency you know how to spend. You are holding your breath, hoping someone will see you turning blue and finally come to save you. But this tragic childhood barter system does not remain confined to the walls of your early home. If a developing mind is entirely conditioned to believe that carrying a heavy cross is the only way to be seen, what happens when that child steps out into the vast, complicated theater of the outside world? When that terrified child we just spoke of grows up and steps out of the family home, they carry that deeply ingrained barter system into the vast, complex theater of the adult world. We trade the living room floor for coffee shops, office desks, and digital spaces. We look around at the millions of other wandering souls, and we realize, with a heavy collective sigh, that everyone else is playing the exact same desperate game. We form entire social structures, deep interpersonal bonds, and complex tribal networks based completely on our shared tragedies. We walk into the world carrying our emotional wounds, not just as memories, but as VIP passes to a very exclusive, very dark gathering. Welcome to the Club of the Bruised, E. I want you to notice how this plays out in your everyday interactions. Pay attention to the subtle tightening in your chest, the rigid posture you assume when someone tells you about their difficult week, and a strange, quiet voice inside you that immediately prepares to prove that your week was somehow harder, heavier, or more unbearable. We engage in a silent, exhausting competition, fiercely defending the weight of our own cross. We lay our traumas out on the table like a morbid currency, silently asking our peers, "Am I wounded enough to belong here? Is my heartache heavy enough to earn a seat at your table?" The physical toll of constantly proving your pain is immense. You feel it in the chronic tension running up the back of your neck, the heavy, dragging sensation in your limbs, and the way your jaw instinctively clenches when you feel your suffering is being underestimated or overlooked by others. We wear our exhaustion as a badge of honor, secretly believing that the one who hurts the most is somehow the most noble, the most profound, and the most special. This is a breathtakingly tragic illusion. We have completely confused deep, genuine human connection with trauma bonding. I know how immensely comforting it feels to find someone who mirrors your ache, someone who looks at your bleeding edges and nods in solemn solidarity. But I must be incredibly gentle and yet surgically honest with you right now. Your suffering does not make you special. Your trauma is not your identity. The devastating events you survived are not the most interesting or beautiful things about your soul. Stripping away this subtle pride you hold in your pain is terrifying because it forces your ego to ask a paralyzing question. Who are you without your heavy story? If you finally set down the cross, will you become invisible again? If you are feeling a strange, uncomfortable resonance in your chest right now, if you are recognizing this hidden dynamic operating in the shadows of your own life, I want you to take a slow, grounding breath. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. If you feel aligned with this exact moment of shedding that heavy social identity, I invite you to gently anchor your intention in the comments below by writing the phrase, "I release the badge." It is a quiet, powerful declaration to yourself and to this community that you are ready to be seen for your inherent light, not just your shadows. And if this space, this quiet room of awareness we are building together, brings a sense of profound clarity to your exhausted spirit, consider staying with us. Subscribe to this frequency, not merely as a viewer, but as a fellow traveler choosing to consciously walk out of the dark. We cling so desperately to this social identity of pain because it gives us a false sense of grounding and belonging in a wildly unpredictable universe. We want the world to know we survived. But to maintain this identity, to keep the badge of suffering shiny and visible for everyone to see, your inner narrator must perform a terrifying magic trick behind the scenes. It must forcefully kidnap your consciousness, pulling you out of the only place where you are actually safe, and locking you inside a strange, relentless mechanism that completely hijacks your perception of reality itself. To keep you chained to this heavy identity, to ensure that the ghost of your pain never truly dissolves, the voice in your head must perform a relentless, exhausting manipulation of reality itself. It must hijack your pure consciousness and forcefully pull you out of the only dimension where you are actually completely safe. It drags your fragile awareness into the suffocating, inescapable architecture of a broken time machine. I want you to look incredibly closely at the precise nature of your suffering. Notice a profound, almost terrifying cosmic rule. Your suffering never, ever exists in the absolute present moment. Right now, in the exact microscopic fraction of this current breath, you are merely existing. You are just breathing. In the pure, unfiltered geometry of the now, there is no agony. There is only profound stillness. There is only pure being. But the inner narrator, the desperate architect of your misery, cannot survive in the sterile, quiet vacuum of the present moment. It starves in the now, Therefore, it must desperately feed on the grand illusion of time, so it forcefully grabs the controls of your mind and throws your awareness violently backward. It traps you in the heavy, crushing gravity of the past. You are forced to wander, completely alone, through the haunted, collapsing corridors of what has already died. You are made to stare directly into the eyes of your old agonizing mistakes, to touch the cold, dead ashes of timelines that have permanently collapsed, and to relive the exact, visceral sting of rejections that evaporated into the cosmic void long ago. It feels exactly like drowning in thick, freezing water, being pulled relentlessly under by the sheer weight of a history you can never, ever change. You are grieving deeply inside a quantum graveyard, completely convinced that the shadows around you are real, breathing entities actively hunting your soul in the dark. And then, just when the suffocating weight of the past becomes entirely unbearable, just when you feel your spirit might finally shatter under the immense pressure, the narrator violently yanks the lever in the absolute opposite direction. It catapults you violently forward into the chaotic, spinning vortex of a future that simply does not exist. Suddenly, your physical heart is pounding wildly against your ribs. Your breath becomes rapid, shallow, choking on the thin electric air of pure anticipation. You are being forced by your own mind to pre-live cataclysms. You are aggressively bracing your fragile energetic field for devastating impacts that have not even begun to form in the quantum fabric of reality. You are actively fighting imaginary catastrophic wars in a dimension of pure speculation. The sheer velocity of your racing, intrusive thoughts creates a blinding, terrifying hurricane inside your own skull. Past, future. The pendulum swings violently back and forth, faster and faster, generating a sickening temporal vertigo. You are swinging wildly between the dark, inescapable gravity of what is already gone and the terrifying, chaotic hurricane of what might be. This is the absolute peak of mental claustrophobia. You are cornered by the invisible walls of time, utterly exhausted from fighting devastating battles in dimensions that hold absolutely no physical substance. The most devastating illusion of human consciousness is believing that this relentless temporal displacement is real. You are physically sitting in a room in absolute stillness, yet energetically your soul is being torn apart across the infinite, unforgiving expanses of time. You are screaming silently for a way out, desperately begging for the pendulum to simply stop, for the walls of this temporal prison to dissolve so you can just catch a single peaceful breath. But the most maddening irony of this exhausting internal warfare becomes painfully clear only when you finally stop spinning. Open your physical eyes and take a cold, hard look at the actual reality currently surrounding your physical vessel. Open your physical eyes for just a moment and truly look at the reality immediately surrounding you. You are likely sitting in a comfortable, temperature-controlled room. There is a sturdy roof over your head, effortlessly holding back the elements of nature. There is clean water flowing from a tap and food resting quietly in your kitchen, instantly accessible at your absolute convenience. From a purely biological, evolutionary standpoint, you are living in a state of unprecedented, unimaginable physical security. You are infinitely safer right now than the vast majority of human beings who have ever walked the face of this earth. There are no apex predators stalking you from the shadows of your hallway. The harsh, freezing winter is not coming to claim you in the night. Physically, you are entirely shielded. Yet, despite existing inside this magnificent fortress of modern comfort, your nervous system is completely shattered. You are vibrating with a silent, invisible terror. How is it possible that we belong to the most physically secure generation in the entire history of humanity? Yet we are simultaneously enduring the absolute, devastating peak of psychological fragility. This is the dark, terrifying paradox of our modern existence. Your physical vessel, this magnificent biological machine you inhabit, is running on incredibly ancient, highly reactive survival software that was aggressively coded in a brutal, unforgiving wilderness tens of thousands of years ago. In that ancestral world, danger was immediate, physical, and highly lethal. The sudden sharp rustle in the tall grass meant a beast was about to tear you apart. The massive rush of adrenaline, the wildly pounding heart, the violently contracting muscles, these were brilliant biological gifts. They were the very mechanisms that kept your ancestors alive so you could breathe today. But over the centuries, We took that exact same primal life-or-death machinery and forcefully plugged it directly into a highly abstract, digital, and socially complex society. And the results are utterly devastating to your spirit. Think deeply about what happens inside your body right now, when a highly anticipated email goes completely unanswered, or when someone's tone of voice shifts ever so slightly during a casual conversation. In the grand, infinite tapestry of the universe, these are microscopic, entirely harmless events. They possess absolutely no physical threat to your life or your limbs. Yet your ancient survival algorithm does not know the difference between a subtle social rejection and a starving saber-toothed tiger. The very moment a text message is left unread or a notification fails to appear, your brain violently slams the primal panic button. It aggressively floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. Your chest tightens as if in a vice, your breathing becomes incredibly shallow, and a cold, heavy dread settles deep into the pit of your stomach. You are biologically preparing to fight to the absolute death or run for your life, all while simply sitting silently on your incredibly soft living room couch, staring at a glowing piece of glass. This is why you are so deeply, unfathomably exhausted. You are not just tired from managing your daily routines. You are energetically and biologically depleted because your body intimately believes it is violently fighting off lethal predators from the second you open your eyes until the moment you finally collapse into a restless sleep. The grand exhausting illusion of our time is the terrifying belief that a bruised ego, a missed opportunity, or an awkward silence is a literal matter of survival. Your internal software has gone completely rogue, hallucinating deadly threats in the entirely harmless shadows of modern convenience. You are surviving 100 imaginary apocalypses every single week. But if this relentless, terrifying internal alarm system is destroying our peace and keeping us locked in a state of perpetual agonizing exhaustion, we are forced to ask a crucial, life-altering question. How on earth do we turn this deafening siren off if fighting it only makes it louder? I want you to take a slow, deliberate breath right now. Let the frantic, chaotic momentum we just explored completely dissolve into the quiet space around you. Lower your shoulders away from your ears, unclench your jaw, and simply allow yourself to arrive exactly where you are in this very second. We have walked through the dark, exhausting labyrinth of your temporal suffering, but now I want to show you the very first beam of penetrating light. And the most beautiful part of this light is that it does not require you to learn a complicated new philosophy, nor does it demand a massive, strenuous mental breakthrough. It simply requires you to look down at your own physical body and remember a silent, majestic intelligence that has been operating flawlessly since the moment you took your first breath. Imagine for a moment that you accidentally brush your arm against a sharp edge and receive a physical cut. It is a real wound. It stings sharply, it bleeds, and it undeniably hurts. But what exactly do you have to do to make that physical laceration heal? Do you have to sit down in a quiet room, close your eyes, and consciously direct your white blood cells to rush to the site of the injury? Do you have to forcefully command your skin cells to divide and regenerate? Absolutely not. Your physical vessel possesses a profound, quiet wisdom that operates entirely beyond your conscious control. The very moment the injury occurs, a miraculous automated mechanism takes over in the background. The blood naturally clots, a fragile protective crust begins to form, and the torn tissue seamlessly knits itself back together. The body inherently knows exactly how to heal itself. It only requires one single fundamental condition from you to complete this miracle. You must simply leave it alone. Now think about the absolute devastation that occurs if you refuse to leave that wound alone. What happens if, every single morning, you wake up, look at that fragile new scab, and violently scratch it off with your fingernails? You instantly expose the raw, tender nerve endings all over again. The cut bleeds afresh. The surrounding skin becomes red, swollen, chronically inflamed, and fiercely painful. The wound remains open for months, maybe even years. But listen to me very closely. It does not remain open because your biological intelligence is broken. It does not stay raw because you are fundamentally incapable of healing. It remains an open, agonizing sore simply because your constant, relentless interference is actively preventing the natural cycle of restoration from finishing its work. This perfectly observable physical reality is the ultimate flawless mirror for your psychological suffering. Your emotional wounds, the sudden, breathless abandonment, the profound, heavy grief, the absolute shattering of a reality you deeply loved, possess the exact same self-healing architecture as your physical skin. There is a silent, immense psychological intelligence within your consciousness that is perfectly designed to metabolize grief, to close the invisible energetic lacerations, and to return your nervous system to a state of absolute, unshakable equilibrium. But we are trapped in a devastating illusion. We deeply, subconsciously believe that emotional healing requires aggressive, exhausting mental labor. We believe we must constantly figure the pain out, analyze the betrayal from every conceivable angle, and replay the tragic memories over and over again in the dark until they somehow make logical sense. But every single time you allow your mind to obsessively replay the tragedy, every time you mentally stalk a ghost from your past, you are violently picking at the emotional scab. You are forcefully tearing open the delicate, energetic tissue that your soul is desperately trying to knit back together. You are actively confusing relentless rumination with actual healing. I want you to feel the profound, staggering relief hidden deep inside this realization. Let it wash over your tired chest. Healing your exhausted mind requires significantly less effort from you, not more. It demands your passive observation, not your active, exhausting labor. The deep, lingering ache in your spirit is simply waiting for you to step back, to stop aggressively scratching at the fragile edges of the memory, and to let the quiet, cosmic intelligence of your consciousness naturally close the wound. But as you feel the weight of this beautiful truth settle into your bones, a haunting, almost paralyzing question naturally arises in the silence. If the ultimate secret to healing is simply to step back and stop touching the wound, why is it so impossibly, agonizingly hard to do? Why does that inner narrator fight so fiercely, so desperately, to keep your hands violently digging into the raw edges of your own heartbreak? For so long, you have been locked in a bitter, exhausting war with your own mind. When you lie awake in the suffocating silence of the night, listening to that internal narrator endlessly dissect your past failures and project catastrophic scenarios into your future, your immediate instinct is profound resentment. You hate this voice, you view it as a malicious entity, a dark saboteur deliberately trying to ruin your life, crush your self-esteem, and keep you chained to your misery. You have spent years desperately trying to silence it, fighting it with sheer willpower, aggressively trying to block it out, feeling completely broken because this internal tormentor refuses to leave you in peace. You look at the open wound of your suffering, and you cannot understand why your own mind insists on violently picking at the edges. But I want you to take a deep, slow breath right now and prepare to completely dismantle this hostile relationship with your own consciousness. What if everything you have ever believed about this inner voice is entirely backwards? What if the relentless narrator, holding your mind hostage, is not a demon trying to destroy you, but rather a profoundly terrified, hyper-vigilant protector? Imagine for a moment a massive, heavily armored bodyguard whose only mission in the universe is to keep you alive. Years ago, when you experienced your first devastating heartbreak, your first profound rejection, or the absolute shattering of your safety, this bodyguard watched you bleed. It watched your fragile nervous system nearly collapse under the crushing weight of that original agony. In that very moment of unbearable vulnerability, a rigid algorithmic program was written deep into your subconscious. The bodyguard made a solemn, desperate vow. It promised that it would never, ever let you be caught off guard like that again. This is the monumental, life-altering shift in perception you must embrace right now. The voice that constantly reminds you of your past humiliations is not trying to torture you. It is aggressively studying the blueprints of your previous wounds, so you never walk into the same trap twice. When it forces you to pre-live a terrifying future, flooding your chest with the cold, heavy dread of anxiety, it is simply running a desperate defensive simulation. It is a paranoid bodyguard obsessively mapping out every possible worst-case scenario, foolishly believing that if you violently rehearse the catastrophe in your mind today, the actual event will not destroy you when it arrives tomorrow. It is desperately trying to build an impenetrable fortress of preparation around your fragile heart. The grand illusion is the profound belief that your ego is your mortal enemy. It is not. It is an outdated, wildly overactive survival algorithm running on ancient hardware, utterly unaware that the physical war is already over. I want you to physically feel the immense, sweeping relief of this revelation. Notice how the burning anger you hold toward your own mind begins to soften. The chronic tightness in your jaw, the harsh judgment you carry for feeling so anxious, the secret shame of believing you are fundamentally defective, let it all melt away into a space of profound, radical self-compassion. You are not a broken human being. You are not weak. You are simply a beautiful soul being defended far too aggressively by a loyal mechanism that has completely lost its sense of reality. Your nervous system is so unimaginably exhausted simply because your internal protector has been working triple overtime, pacing the dark halls of your consciousness without a single moment of rest, desperately trying to keep the invisible monsters at bay. When you finally look at this paranoid bodyguard, not with hatred, but with deep empathetic understanding, a massive, energetic shift occurs. The heavy internal weapons you have been carrying naturally drop to the floor. You stop going to war with the very system that is desperately trying to save your life out of a primal, misplaced love. But this beautiful, quiet realization brings us to the ultimate threshold of your liberation. If you now know that you absolutely cannot fight this protector, because attacking it only validates its paranoia and makes it guard you even more fiercely, how do you finally relieve it of its exhausting duty? What is the precise internal maneuver required to finally convince this terrified guardian that the danger has passed? We have established that fighting your own mind is a futile, endlessly exhausting war. But how do you actually stop? How do you lay down your heavy weapons when every single biological fiber of your being is screaming at you to defend yourself from the ache? The answer is the most terrifying, deeply counterintuitive and profoundly liberating maneuver you will ever execute in your entire human experience. It is the absolute secret of radical surrender, and it requires a complete rebellion against everything your survival instincts are telling you to do. I want you to vividly visualize a horrifying scenario. You are standing on the very edge of a dark, bottomless abyss. In your hands, you are desperately gripping a thick, abrasive rope. On the exact opposite side of this terrifying canyon, holding the other end of the rope, is a massive, relentless monster. This beast is constructed entirely of your deepest traumas, your most paralyzing anxieties, your profound, unspoken grief, and your heaviest regrets. It is hideous, and it is pulling on that rope with a violent, staggering force, trying to drag you over the edge and into the dark void. Your immediate, primal instinct is to pull back. So, you dig your heels deep into the dirt. You grip the rough fibers until your knuckles turn completely white and the skin of your palms begins to violently bleed. Your muscles are violently trembling, screaming in agonizing fatigue. Your chest is burning, your jaw is locked in absolute blinding pain. You have spent your entire life pulling on this rope, completely convinced that if you just pull hard enough, if you just analyze the pain from enough angles, if you just fight the dark emotions with enough raw willpower, you will eventually drag the monster into the abyss and finally be free. But here is the grand, devastating illusion that keeps you permanently trapped in this infinite cycle of torture. The monster does not possess its own independent strength. It is entirely fueled by your resistance. Every single ounce of force you use to pull back is immediately transferred straight into the muscles of the beast. The harder you fight your suffering, the stronger and heavier it becomes. The more you try to aggressively outthink your pain, the more dense and terrifying the monster grows. You are locked in a mortal combat where your own defensive energy is the exact weapon being used to slowly destroy you. So, how on earth do you defeat a monster that literally feeds on your resistance? You do the one thing your ego is absolutely paralyzing, terrified to do. You open your bleeding hands. You simply let go of the rope. I want you to physically feel the immense, shocking release of that action right now in your own body. Let your shoulders completely drop. Let your chest soften. You do not try to push the monster away. You do not try to run from the edge. You do not try to rationalize the pain or negotiate with the anxiety. You do absolutely nothing. If the monster pulls, you let it fall backward into the abyss from its own unchecked, violent momentum. You are stepping completely out of the arena. This is the breathtaking art of radical surrender. It is not weakness, it is not giving up. It is the ultimate sovereign withdrawal of your vital life force from the heavy architecture of your own suffering. When you finally drop the rope, something incredibly intense and terrifying will happen. The raw, unfiltered energy of the emotion will rush toward you. The panic, the profound grief, the overwhelming sadness will flare up like a towering, roaring inferno entirely surrounding your physical body. Your frantic mind will scream that you are going to burn alive. But you must hold your ground. You must sit directly inside the raging fire of your own pain, completely stripped of your heavy armor, offering absolutely zero resistance. You silently observe the crushing weight in your chest. You observe the thick, suffocating heat in your throat. You observe the frantic trembling in your hands. You become pure, silent, unmoving awareness. You do not judge the fire. You do not ask why it is burning, and you do not pray for it to end. You simply allow it to blaze with its full, terrifying intensity, while you remain perfectly, beautifully still in the absolute center of the flames. As you sit there, suspended in this pure, non-judgmental observation, completely refusing to pull the rope or fight the heat, a miraculous physical and energetic transmutation begins to unfold in the very core of your being. What exactly happens when you finally allow the fire to burn completely unchecked, without throwing a single piece of your own defensive narrative into the flames? When you finally allow the fire to burn completely unchecked, without throwing a single piece of your own defensive narrative into the flames, the roaring chaos begins to fundamentally change its nature. As you sit perfectly still in the center of the inferno, breathing slowly, feeling the immense heat but refusing to judge it, you step out of the heavy, exhausting role of the victim and into the absolute sovereign power of the cosmic alchemist. This quiet, terrifyingly beautiful space you have just entered is the ultimate crucible of human consciousness. Let us call it the Forge of Silence. In this majestic state of pure, unwavering observation, the raw, chaotic energy of your emotional pain directly meets the blinding light of your absolute presence. And right here in the quiet dark of your own mind, a profound and miraculous separation takes place. For your entire life you have tightly braided two entirely different elements together, entirely confusing one for the other. The actual, factual event that happened to you and the heavy, agonizing story your inner narrator aggressively spun about what that event meant. But inside the intense, purifying heat of this forge, you finally apply the ultimate energetic mechanism. You apply the golden filter. Pure, silent, non-judgmental attention acts as a devastatingly powerful solvent. As you simply watch the profound grief, the sharp anger, or the paralyzing fear without uttering a single word in your mind, without claiming that the pain makes you fundamentally broken or unworthy, the temperature in the crucible violently rises. The heavy, dark lead of your ego's victimization, the exhausting, repetitive whispers that you are unlovable, that the universe is cruel and punishing, that you will never truly recover, begins to liquefy. You watch, with a remarkably steady heart and crystal-clear eyes, as the grand illusion of your chronic suffering literally melts away. The dramatic stories, the desperate childhood need for pity, the terrifying, catastrophic projections of a ruined future, they all burn off like thick, dark smoke rising into the night sky, completely dissolving into the infinite void. They simply cannot survive the quiet, piercing heat of your unfiltered awareness. You realize with a sudden, breathless expansion in your chest that the intense burning you felt all those years was never the destruction of your beautiful soul. It was merely the painful incineration of your false identities. And as the dark smoke finally clears, and the roaring, chaotic fire naturally begins to die down into a soft, warm, glowing ember, you look down into the very bottom of your internal crucible. There, resting in the absolute, sacred stillness of your own consciousness, is something breathtaking. Stripped of all the toxic mental narratives, separated entirely from the paralyzing psychological drama, the raw trauma leaves behind a single, heavy, glowing nugget of incorruptible gold. This is pure, unadulterated wisdom. This is the profound, beautiful lesson completely stripped of all its agonizing thorns. It is the deep, cellular realization of your own boundaries, the magnificent expansion of your innate compassion, or the undeniable physical proof of your immense energetic resilience. I want you to feel the colossal, majestic power that this realization awakens in your physical body right now. Breathe it in deeply. Feel the absolute invincibility settling into your bones. This mechanism proves that there is absolutely no tragedy, no harsh rejection, no devastating loss in this earthly dimension that is powerful enough to truly destroy you. You now possess the supreme energetic technology to process it all. Everything that happens to you, every tear, every betrayal, every moment of blinding fear, is no longer a weapon used against you. It is nothing but raw, magnificent fuel for your profound mental evolution. You have become a master of transmutation, standing tall and unharmed in the quiet aftermath of the fire, holding the pure gold of your own expanded awareness. But as you hold this heavy, shining wisdom in your hands, gazing at the beautiful clarity it brings to your weary spirit, we must walk into the final threshold. Now that the lead has been forever transmuted and the fire has faded into peace, what happens to the very fabric of your reality, and how does this permanently alter the way you walk through the rest of your earthly existence? As you hold this pure gold of wisdom, a magnificent silence finally washes over your entire being. You realize with tears of profound relief that the grand illusion of suffering has completely collapsed. You were never a fragile, broken vessel meant to be destroyed by the harsh blows of this world. You are and have always been the masterpiece. That agonizing pain you carried for so long was never a cosmic punishment. It was merely the heavy chisel of life striking the marble of your ego, deliberately chipping away every false identity, every defensive wall, and every heavy expectation that was never truly you. What remains standing in the dust is your most authentic, incorruptible essence. You now step back out into the chaos of this earthly dimension, armed with an absolute, unshakable emotional immunity. The outer world may storm, people may leave, and the winds may howl, but inside your chest there is only the vast, untouchable stillness of a soul that has finally remembered its own infinite, quiet power. If you have walked with me all the way to the very end of this profound journey, and you feel this deep peace finally anchoring into your bones, let me know that you made it through the fire. Anchor your frequency in the comments below by writing the exact phrase, "The illusion is broken." If this quiet room of awareness brought you comfort today, and you crave more of this profound clarity, click on one of the videos appearing on your screen right now to continue your expansion. And if you wish to actively support this channel and dive even deeper into our cosmic exploration, consider becoming a channel member to unlock exclusive, dedicated content made just for our closest travelers. The heavy fire has faded, my friend. The lead is gone. You are finally free to just breathe.